Check. Oh, it just has to be on. Okay, thank you so much for the technical assistance that I probably could have figured out myself. My name is Jenna Tesdal, and I am the director of YPARD. And it is my huge pleasure today to welcome you to our special format event called Borrowing the Earth from Our Grandchildren. What does intergenerational justice mean to you? We want to hold this event in an interview-style format to give the two presenters a little bit more time than perhaps the normal panel presentation would allow, and to give us a little bit more in-depth discussion with the ideas with these intergenerational champions. I know you've seen a lot of youth on the stage today, which doesn't happen very much, and now we're going to see an intergenerational exchange about ideas about how to push forward change in organizations, because organizations also have a huge role in upholding the status quo, current power relations, and also these systems that we're trying to change and that we all say are failing us. So we have two illustrious interviewees today, I will call them, because we have more time to go into this. We have Martina Fleckenstein from the Worldwide Fund for Nature, and she has been a huge ally of youth, working with Youngo, working with YPARD, and so we're really interested to hear her views. And we're really interested to hear from Karen Munoko. She works at FARA, the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, who is a longtime partner of YPARD, and especially of YPARD Africa. And so we want to learn from her expertise in agribusiness, in gender, and also working with youth. We have a small change in the program today. As you may know, many folks have been getting food poisoning, and so, actually, my face is already on there. Someone was very quick, but actually our moderator for today, unfortunately, is not feeling well. And so we have a very generous new moderator, Lindsey Hook, and she is an expert of communication. She works with the World Food Forum based at FAO. And so I'll invite her to the floor to do the interviews with our panelists. And our first panelist up is Karen Munoko. And so I would also invite her to the floor and invite you to take a seat.
Hi, thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Please have a seat here. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you so much, everyone. I understand the food poisoning struggle. I had it yesterday, so here we are. But it's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me. So I do have a first question for you, Karen. So how is your organization, FARA, working to drive intergenerational partnerships? I know you act as a supporter to the next generation, to the young people, and through your mentorship of your younger staff members and partnering with these youth organizations like YPARD and the like, how does your organizational framework complement, help or hinder your personal ideas on this?
Thank you, Lindsey, for that question. As you've heard, my name is Karen Munoko. I work with the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa. Before I get to that, I would like to make a very important point that actually guides the work that I do. So when I was younger, my dad always planted trees. Everywhere we moved to, like we'll move to a new home, he'll take me to buy the seedlings, and then we'll plant trees in our new home, and that became a culture. So when I was picking a course for my university, that's what guided my decision. So I ended up doing environmental science. And I realized that it became so much a part of me that one of the things that my dad said when I picked environmental science is that was the right choice. And I asked him why, and he said, because it's the first career that God created. I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, in the Bible, it's written that God created livestock, animals, plants, and then man, and then he told man, go take care of the earth. So I was excited. At least my career choice had a sense of purpose. So fast forward, I'm currently in FARA, which is the technical arm of the African Union on matters to do with agriculture research for development. I am overseeing agribusiness, youth, and gender portfolio, and working very closely with YPARD Africa. And the first question that came to me is, how can we make youth, the youth work relevant? And I realized that most of the programs that were running, the youth initiatives especially, were running in isolation. It's like youth initiatives are run by youth, decisions made by youth, but in isolation to other programs. And so we developed a strategy on strengthening the youth engagement in the continent. And we work very closely with the sub-regional organizations. From East Africa is Azareka, Southern Africa is Cadesa, and West and Central Africa is Koraf. North Africa is Nazro. So we developed a strategy together in collaboration with YPARD that mentors youth in the work that we do. Because I grew up from a place of, my dad did not only tell me the importance of trees, but he showed me the importance of trees. And I believe that for us to work with the youth, we have to show them. We don't just tell them what to do, but actually do what we think is right. And or we've agreed is right. So the strategy basically allows young people to be part of the organization's programs. So, and all the projects that we run under FARA, we make sure that we involve youth. For example, we have a knowledge management for agriculture development program that's currently running. We have Africa Agribusiness and Science Week, which is a convergence of science and business. We have a youth portfolio, very strong voice. They're part of the organizing team. We have foresight activities that we're currently doing with MasterCard Foundation and Foresight for Food, and many other programs. But I think what I would like to finish with is to make sure that we are also accountable for the activities. We've aligned it with the tracking, monitoring, and evaluation mechanism under the African Union Commission. It's the CAADP-BR process. CAADP is the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Framework that, so the biannual review, the tracking progress of our commitments to achieve Agenda 2063 at the continent level and Agenda 2030 at the global level. So we've mainstreamed the youth activities under that process so that we can track the progress and the process that we are in. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the more specific activities that you're doing, more of the projects. Maybe you could tell us kind of about your favorite ones, the ones you're most passionate about, and then I'm definitely going to ask you more about the trees.
So I'd started mentioning the project earlier. I talked about the knowledge management for agricultural development. It is being carried out together with sub-regional organizations to strengthen our knowledge systems in agriculture for development. We have a project called Strengthening Knowledge, Research and Innovation Ecosystems in East Africa. This one is being carried out in Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda. And we have WIPAD Rwanda actually as the sub-grantee of the project, which is funded by the Organization for Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific States through the OSCPS, funded by European Union. We have the project that I mentioned earlier, Foresight, carrying out foresight activities. This is my favorite, and this is exciting for me because I realize that, when it comes to foresighting, just deciding and setting up scenarios for the future and seeing what does the future look like. What are the plausible scenarios for engaging youth now versus never, or when we're talking about science, developing climate smart technologies, what does it look like for the future? Who benefits? It really brings in the whole systems thinking, Who's the driver of this? Who are we developing the technologies for? And at the micro level, are these technologies accessible, affordable, available? At the macro level, are policies established in a way that it actually allows young people to benefit or even to be able to start up businesses with these technologies? And talking about entrepreneurship, it was mentioned earlier, we don't know. I mean, the startup ecosystem in Africa is not very conducive for young entrepreneurs to just set up a business. So who are we doing this for? That's the big question. And so when we design these plausible scenarios for the future, then it gives our policymakers something to work with. And they're like, okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 scenarios, so which one do we pick? And it really brings in the element of accountability, strengthens transparency, helps with decision-making processes. Yeah, so you can tell that's my favorite. And so we have capacity development initiatives as well, where we've engaged the youth to be part of the process of facilitating even this process, not just being the recipients of the training, but also facilitating the training. And this is being done together with the FAO. And lastly, the Africa Agribusiness and Science Week, where we are launching it next year in Durban, South Africa, in June, from 5th to 8th. And we have WIPAD as the main collaborator. They're going to be organizing a global congress in South Africa. But this is not just a one-off event. It's a 5-year partnership. We are looking at tracking mechanisms and seeing, having matchmaking sessions where we're bringing in businesses to actually get, we're matchmaking business and skills, youth skills, and bringing young entrepreneurs for showcasing their work, for hackathons, to hopefully attract investors for their businesses. So it's an exciting event for me as well. So there are two, Africa Agribusiness Science Week and the Foresights. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I would also like to know a little more. It sounds like your organization is very conducive to getting the young people involved, having these partnerships that are conducive to your goals. But have you run into any kind of issues going against getting the youth involved, and how have you overcome them?
Well, yeah, initially it was a bit tough because, like I said, the youth were beneficiaries. The youth were to be told, you know, when I have an event like this, I would call the youth to sit in so that I can report that I engage the youth, but they wouldn't really be part of the process. And so mainstreaming that at the national level has not been very easy. And that's why we are having the Mentorship Youth Summit every year. Part of our strategy in youth engagement is mentorship. And we're pushing for engaging youth at the sub-regional level, at the national level, because we work closely with national agricultural research systems, where we're advocating for youth to be part of the process. And in our annual summit, we make sure that the youth come and present the work that they're doing, and they say, this is what they're not coming to ask to be involved, but informing the national systems that we are already doing and we can collaborate with you, So that has been a success from the challenge that we had initially, but it's a slow process. Yeah, the uptake has been slower than we hoped for. Yeah.
Of course. So my last question for you in this part of your interview is, I know you spoke about having also some successes in getting the youth involved in policy. And do you have any suggestions for other countries in Africa, how they can get youth involved? Is there any kind of steps that you've taken that you find successful that other organizations can take to make sure that youth are involved in policy making?
Thank you for that. Yeah, so the first suggestion I would say is mindset. So we've had this mindset of youth may not really know what to do with money, for example. So even if we give them these opportunities, they still need an adult, which could be true, but also we've had to, so what we've done about it is we bring youth together for mentorship discussions, where we're getting the youth who are involved in the process, who are accessing resources, who access funding, and they talk about their experience, And one thing that we've also had to remind young people is to be humble and accept that, yes, you may need an older person to hold your hand, and that's why we really work very closely with them in the processes that we do so that they don't work in isolation. Because in isolation, they might feel left out and they might just move by themselves. And there are systems in place. There are people who've worked to make things better, but we agree it could be better with the voice of the youth. So now we're saying, okay, youth have a perception that may not have been integrated into the system, and that's why we need the youth on board. But we've had to do the mentorship to ensure that the youth actually are getting the headspace in the right place, but also for the other generations to know that youth have something to bring on the table. And they've seen, it's actually within our organization, there's a tremendous change. We're getting youth more involved in speaking engagements, in organizing such events. Yeah, well, I'm a youth and I'm here. Though I'm transitioning slowly, but yeah, it's been a success so far.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. I think it's very clear from what you've told us that the first step of getting us young people more involved in policy and really getting us kind of included in the decision-making process is just to take a first step, is to create something concrete, to actually approach these people and say, this is our expertise, this is what we can do, here are some examples maybe of what we've done already, here's what we can achieve together, now let's begin. And just kind of start with that first step. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Lindsey. Thank you very much.
I'll call you back up soon.
All right. Thank you.
So I would love to welcome you, Martina, to come up, and we're going to go through the same question from a different perspective, so I'll just repeat it. So how is your organization, WWF, working to drive intergenerational partnerships, as you are such a supporter of the younger generation, also as we heard before? Do you tell us about the mentorship to your younger staff members, their opportunities, working with the youth-led or partner organizations like YPARD and others, and how does your organizational framework help or hinder everything you want to do with youth?
Thank you. I was really listening very, very interesting in the previous interview. WWF, and just to explain, we are a global network. So we have about 80 to 100 offices in different countries. And so the engagement with youth is not a top-down process from WWF International, but it's really coming from the ground, from our national offices. And in this context also, the priorities or the focus of the national offices might be very different. So it really goes from climate to wildlife to oceans to food to forests. So it depends a little bit on also the urgencies on the ground. Just to point out, for example, one urgency where I think especially youth had been very successful was on our plastic campaign. So this was also which started in several countries, and it was then at the end a global a movement and a global campaign. And I think we had been successful now with the UN Convention on to avoid plastic. So that's a little bit just one example. The other example maybe on the food sector, and our food program is the newest and latest. It's the youngest program WWF has. It's just 4 years or 5 years old now. And also here we work with young people. We currently are running EU-funded project that's also possibility really to get funds for these activities, which is running in 10 European countries, in Argentina and in Brazil. And it's called Eat for Change. And it helps young people really to decide or to get engaged, to decide every day what is on their plate. But it's more than just a personal engagement. Also, our partners in the different countries are then working together with other youth organizations. So we always try to build up networks of youth organizations in the different countries. And as I mentioned, it's really different in the different parts of the world, but the idea is really to raise awareness for everything which has to do with environment, with people, with nature.
So I would also love to hear about some of your favorite projects that you're working on a little more specifically in some of these regions, especially with youth, because I love to hear that it's not a top-down approach, that it really comes from the local level.
Yes, I just to me personally, I work very long with WWF. I was very long with WWF Germany, and so most of my experience working with youth, with young people, is at the moment also based what's happening in Germany, but also at a more European level. One good example what we have done on food loss and waste. So this is a priority. And we really have brought together a huge campaign in Germany on reduction of especially food waste, where we are going to parliamentarian, and I think it's a very, very strong message to bring young people to parliamentarian. And let's say the role of old senior people is then to open the doors for young people. So very often parliamentarians, they don't want to talk to young people, they want to have the senior. And so it's very nice. So we really connected our youth groups with the parliamentarian to talk about the problems, what they see. And one of the things WWF is want really to go in a dialogue, yeah? To talk to decision makers, and to explain decision makers also the concern. And on this campaign, at the end, we made a huge, what's the English word? We had a huge event where we had food which was or has to be thrown away, but it was you still could eat it. And we had a huge event in front of the main station in Berlin, and parliamentarians were coming. So these are these small things. Maybe sometimes it looks, oh, this is not a big decision, but it helps on the mind setting. And what youth could do is a gender setting, yeah, really reiterate. And if you want to influence politicians, you don't have to have 10 different messages. Have 3 and repeat it all the time, and then they get it. So that's a little bit also my advice on youth. Short, clear 3 messages, and one day they get it. And that's a little bit also from the experience, maybe based a little bit on the ground. And we also are doing similar things also with our colleagues in the African countries. We're working with youth, and I'm very happy now to be better connected to Nguru and Weipart, because this is also an opportunity that our organizations are working more closely together. I think if we want to have the power and to make change, we really have to get alliance, yeah, and that's super important. So I'm very happy, and now I think I'm much more better connected to young people at this COP than I ever have been before at any of the other COPs. So strong voice, and great to have you here.
I love to hear that this COP has been such a good year for young people. It's also it's my first COP, but I've really seen a lot of young people, a lot of indigenous peoples, which has been amazing as well. So I'm very happy to hear that. And since it is Champion Day at the Food Systems Pavilion, I know that the WWF has really been a champion for the Cornivia joint work on agriculture. And I know that is a very big topic for us right now, especially just us colleagues working together in this pavilion. We're talking about it all the time. We really bleed for the cause. So would you speak to us a little bit about that? You know, talking about, like you said, these 3 specific action points. Is there anything that we can do besides just continuing to spread the word? Could you give us some tips on how to try and encourage these policymakers to really take action and stop, you know, kind of being asleep at the wheel?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say that we had already a great support from GPAT and from Jungo on the way to the COP27. So we met in Bonn already. We worked together on submissions, which I think is really, really strong. If we bring together different organizations to show we have the same opinion and it could not be ignored. Moment, and I think the Cornivia negotiators are once again this afternoon between now and 3 o'clock to discuss, and we are really a little bit concerned that there is this huge discussion on the integration of a food system approach in the Cornivia, which we really need. And I know that we have just launched a letter, which we have published also, is published, and I think Jungo or GPAT has signed this letter. So this is also a strong message. I'm really a little bit struggling with these microphones. This is also a strong message that we bring together youth organizations, but also World Business Council for Sustainable Development and the CGR, and we all have the same voice, and this is exactly the intergeneration things. What we need, that it's not just the senior established organizations, but we have the voice of the youth, and they also raise the concern on this very, let's say, important process under the Cornivia. And I'm really grateful to everybody who has supported this on the way to the COP, and I think we will have to continue. It's not the next time that we talk about Cornivia, and I hope to count on you that we could continue this journey also to the COP28. I think there is a lot to do and nothing is set in stone at the moment.
Absolutely agreed, and thank you for shedding some light on that, because I know it's not maybe so popular, not everyone has heard of it. Of course, as a communications person myself, such a big part of policy and science and publications is actually telling people about it and the marketing of it, so that's really important. And through all of us kind of coming together and communicating with our networks, I really hope that that will kind of take off as something that more people know about, because food systems are such a critical part of climate change as well. So it sounds like that, in addition to what Karen said about actually just the first step to getting youth into policy being taking that first step, something important to remember is not going in with vague asks, as we don't want to see vague policy. We need to go in with something very specific as well. So in addition to taking that first step, we should also have those kind of 3 very clear points, very clear asks to make sure that there is no room for interpretation. This is exactly what needs to happen, and having those facts to back it up. So thank you for that. And since you're already on stage, I would love to ask you our second question, which is, how do you feel your current work with the next generation connects to early career experiences? And what are your hopes for the future of intergenerational renewal in agriculture?
I mentioned it already in the previous session. We have now COP26, and I remember when I look back, let's say COP10 and beyond, there have not been any young people, and I think even in the last 10 years, I think the number of young people going to climate COPs and hopefully also to the Biodiversity COP in 4 weeks has increased, and this is super and very important, Without the voices of young people, and politicians are listening, believe me, they listen now more than ever to young people. As when I was young, it was really hard to get in contact with politicians, and my perception is now that the youth is really pushing. Yeah, the youth is loud, like at the youth pavilion, and I think the poor FAO pavilion, they a little bit suffer under the loud voices of the youth. So that's a little bit, and that's something we should continue. We should use the power of the youth. Yeah, raise your voice, get in policy processes in a parliament. Engage in NGOs, in non-state actors. And also what we as WWF are offering are internships. Not every office, but especially the European one and some others. We have also an internship program, which is a good opportunity also for young people to learn what WWF is doing. So that's also something where we really try to bring in and engaging also young people. And when I was looking back, we never have got this kind of support. Yeah, everything was very organized. It was the senior people who told you where to go, and this has totally changed. And having this huge number also of women, I think also that it's a second change. We have more women. We have the indigenous people. We have youth now in these events, and this is really a door opener for us. It's a huge opportunity, and we have to take this opportunity.
Absolutely, and I know you spoke about in the previous session as well, the Biodiversity COP, and that you do want that youth involvement in there. So could you share a little more about WWF's work in biodiversity, and especially the Biodiversity COP, how youth are involved in that, as it's such an important part of your work?
Yes, also just to mention, I think it's now only 3 weeks ahead. The Biodiversity Conference will start in Montreal, and this is a very important conference because there will be the decision made on the global biodiversity framework for the next 8 years. And also in this, it's important to integrate food systems. And there are some of the new targets which are still under discussion, need also the power and the voices to bring in a strong message that also when we talk about biodiversity, we cannot ignore food production and consumption. For WWF, we are going to organize a full day, we call it the Food Day, in the week 2 in the Rio Convention Pavilion, where we really want to talk about the different aspects and why food systems should be integrated in these global biodiversity frameworks. And we are really happy and would like to have young people who know already that they will be on the ground. Just let us know. We are really interested to integrate young people in the sessions. It will not be hybrid. It will be also only in person. So maybe that's a little bit a challenge, but maybe Canadian people could participate. So that's a little bit at the moment. Also, there is a youth movement within our biodiversity team.
Amazing. So everyone who is going to Biodiversity COP and here online, please get in touch with Martina and make sure that your voices are heard in everything biodiversity related. So thank you so very much for these answers. And I would love to invite Karen back on the stage. And then after, maybe we could do some questions and answers with you both. Welcome back. So I will repeat the question for you as well. How do you feel that your current work with the next generation connects to early career experiences? And what are your hopes for the future of intergenerational renewal in agriculture?
Thank you for the question. So 2 things come to mind. One is from my previous experience, knowing what I know now, it would have been easier if I got into this sector, if I see the profitability of it. You know, when you talk about protecting the environment, you know, climate smart agriculture technologies, going into science and research, and it's very easy for someone to say it, but how do I earn a living out of it? How do I make money? You know, and so one of the things that I believe would be, should accompany these discussions is how do we make the business environment equally conducive as we have made the research environment conducive. A lot of research is going into biodiversity, into, you know, making sure that we get things right, but is the same effort being put into connecting this research to the business. And that's my current drive, you know, that's what's pushing me to do what I do, so that we can get more youth engaged. We can get more youth not just engaged in the research, but also in the business, but not just any business, but business that supports the research and is relevant and valid, you know, for the future generations. The other thing is, I believe that whether we like it or not, the systems discussion is, you know, when you talk about food systems, it's about the interconnectedness of who we are today. And we can't ignore the fact that these are different cultures coming together, different communities, worldviews, behavior, perception, and going in with just the mental knowledge or without understanding the behaviors, understanding, you know, the social or the values that make us human, you know, who we are as human beings, so engaging the heart. I think it's a conversation that we need to start having. And this will allow us, even as we're moving into the systems, food system, you know, transitioning into a sustainable and inclusive food systems, then we are not just establishing structures and systems that are knowledge-driven, but also socially acceptable and inclusive. Yeah?
Definitely. And, you know, when I was thinking about this question, just talking about intergenerational renewal in agriculture, I had to kind of think about it for a moment. But the way that I interpreted it as well is how we're passing on the sort of traditions that are in agriculture, the indigenous, the traditional knowledge that we have, rooted so deeply in so many different countries that's so diverse, especially with the local varieties of plants and trees, the local breeds of animals that are either wild or domesticated for agriculture. And I loved how you started telling us about how your dad would always plant trees everywhere he went. And it sounds like he was a great example of that intergenerational renewal with you. So do you have any suggestions on how we can get the future generations, you know, our generations and the ones coming after, to kind of stay involved in these agricultural traditions?
Thank you. Actually, I was going to conclude with the same point I started with. So the same way I was introduced into loving the environment by action is the same way we will proceed. And we have to reimagine the future that we want. We have to reimagine what the future would look like when we do things right, you know? Not just talk about it, but actually do it, so that the generations coming after us will know this is the culture. We're changing the norm, you know? And you talked about tradition, yes. It is important to also understand what people hold dear, you know, what values everyone is going by. But once we reimagine what we want for the future, then we need to do it. And I believe it's only right that we do what we want people to do what we do rather than what we say, because that then translates to justice, you know. I know a lot of people say, oh, just do what I say, not what I do, but no. We learn best by watching. Kids learn best by watching, you know, what we do, and they pick it up. So once we reimagine the future, then we do, and others will follow. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so it sounds like from this question, the important things are to make sure that you walk the talk, like we've been saying in several sessions. Planting trees, I think, is even a good way to start. It's really easy. Find a variety that's local to where you live, I think is the best way. And just make sure that you are an example, you know, as the youth, we're the present, where it's not even about the future anymore. So we need to be the ones actually showing people, the young generations even younger than us, what could be done in the future, and making sure that our voices are heard and not giving up, which is something that I've heard from you both today as well. So I think we have a few minutes left for questions from the audience. So I would love to kind of hear if anyone has any questions. Martina, please.
I don't have a question, but there's one thing which is really important. If we want to keep youth engaged, we need structures which are financed. And I recently learned that Yongo didn't even have a secretary and finance. Yeah? And if these conventions want to bring youth in, they also have to set budget aside to really help youth either to travel to these places, because always young people have to find a sponsor to pay for them, and they have to set up the structures. Otherwise, it's a little bit for me a greenwashing also. Yeah, they want to have youth there, but they don't give this kind of support. And I think we really have to call now that even UNFCCC somehow organized in secretariat and have a kind of grants where youth could apply for to participate in these events. And that's also one of the things we really should fight for, guys.
Thank you, Martina. That is definitely the truth and what we needed to hear. Absolutely true. So does anyone have any questions from the audience? Don't be shy. We have two amazing speakers.
Can I add to that?
Please.
So we are organizing a global youth forum in Durban next year, and we need funding. So I'm saying it just as a follow-up to Martina's comment. Please, we need support, we need funding, we need to bring the youth there. They don't just need to push and fight and really struggle, because we need them. We need these young people there. We need them we need to see what they're showcasing, and we need to support their businesses as well, which is actually connecting with the science that we have been producing. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, if we don't have any more questions, do either of you have any final remarks you'd like to add? Jenna, yes, please.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments. I can't resist the temptation to ask a question because, Karen, you were touching so much on the cultural aspects and who we are as humans. And one of the suggestions that Martina made for good policy work and good advocacy work was having those 3 clear messages. Might you also have a tip or an insight like that? Does that apply also to the context of the AU, or do you think another tip is more relevant for youth to take forward in their work?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So actually, I think what I mentioned, like we shouldn't just come from the mind, but from the mind to the heart. That is my take home. Like whatever we do in our interactions, in our research, in policy making, because one of the things that we have suffered as Africans is that policies that actually are not implementable. Why? Because we don't relate with them, you know. They were developed, yes, but do we really, can we relate with that, you know? And so that's my take home, just moving from the mind to the heart. Yeah. Thank you.
I love it. Okay, last chance for questions. Okay, then I think we're all set. Thank you so much to you both for being here today, and we will see you at the next session. So thank you.
I would kindly like to ask the speakers to please take a picture first.